My name's Brian Mountain. I grew up in a place called Lac La Biche. I'm a member of the Beaver Land Cree Nation, woodland Cree up in Lac La Biche. I spent most of my working life working in the oil sands from 1980. Been on all the sites, worked for Suncor, Syncrude. I've been on every site, did airstrips, did pipeline right away. Had the pleasure of working for Fort McKay Group of Companies as an office manager in 2001. One thing I've learned from being up in the oil sands is to think globally. My job in working for big companies is to move the agenda forward for energy reconciliation for First Nations. One of the projects I've worked on is the Indigenous equity investment for the KXL pipeline. In 8 months, we put an agreement together. The value of that was $1.9 billion. We brought nations in Saskatchewan and Alberta together to participate in an equity deal. And it was a pipeline that was canceled by President Biden. And what we did is we pivoted. I'm part of the group that's pursuing the TMX. We're waiting for the government of Canada to bring the terms, and we're looking to bring equity to nations in Alberta and Saskatchewan. It doesn't have to do with the reserve sides. It's about territory. It's about sovereignty. It's about intergenerational wealth. It's about getting our economy back and paying our own way. We're dealing with Canada. Many of the nations along the TMX route, they've never signed treaty with Canada. And that's our goal, is to bring the groups together and do the proper deals. It's an economic opportunity, and it's about economic wealth transfer for the First Nations. So historically, our people, we signed peace treaty, and it was a treaty to share the land, share the resources. It was a great document that wasn't well executed. Our people have suffered trauma over the last 7 generations. I'm the 7th generation from that signing, and I believe my place is to make that reconciliation on an economic level happen, and it's taken some big steps. I'll give you an example. A lot of First Nations people I know in the treaties in Alberta, they don't have a mortgage on their house. They can't finance a car for the simple reason their great-great-grandfather never had a deed to a land. So we just need to catch up economically. Obviously, our people are more educated, they're more refined on the environmental side. Fuel for our people, energy is the next buffalo. So the buffalo provided 172 different items to the First Nation people, anywhere from food to clothing to shelter to tools. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for participation and the opportunity. That opportunity has been given by industry. TC Energy gave a company the opportunity to participate in a $1 billion equity agreement. That was a good start. Other projects that I'm involved with involve Indigenous content, everything that we touch. It's equity, profit sharing, participation. The rent to feather days are over, and I experienced that in the Fort McMurray oil sands for 25 years. So I've experienced it, I've lived it, I've seen the opportunity, I've seen the fantastic growth in the community like Fort McKay, and under their leadership, Kim Boucher and now Mel Granjam, the nations up north in the Athabasca Tribal Council, Fort McMurray First Nation. I have relatives there. They're just looking for the same economic opportunity that the rest of the country has since 1933, since they passed the Lands Act, which gave Canada the access to our resources. So we need to step up, take some big steps, just play catch up and ensure that there's opportunity for the next 7 generations of our people across Canada. So the message to Ottawa is, give us the opportunity, give us the space, give us the resources, and give us the ownership. Give us the ownership back to us, the economic future of Canada and our people. When I say Canada, I mean Turtle Island. That's North America. We didn't divide up our country into provinces and states. In our mind, there isn't that. It's all about territories. There's 640 some First Nations in Canada. If you took all our reservation lands, not territories, and put them on the Navajo Reserve, you'd be looking at under 5% landmass. So they bled for the land. In Canada, we were hunters, trappers. We helped the French and English settle the land, gather furs for the Hudson Bay Company, which, by the way, was actually one of the biggest landowners in Canada at one time. The opportunity for us is change the narrative. Right now, it's a paradigm shift. So the paradigm shift, meaning that we're willing to take ownership, we're capable, ready. And when it comes to oil sands, that's already being done. You have one of the richest nations in the country. They're going to make some big moves. They'll want participation in equity. They'll want to own the companies. They'll want to run the companies. They'll want to provide economic benefits for their people who are traumatized. And what that means is that they go out and buy land, turn it into treaty land, TLE land. They do it in Saskatchewan. They'll buy land right in Saskatchewan, Regina, designated as First Nation land, put a business there. Fort McKay is doing the same thing through their urban effort in Edmonton. One of the foundations of the companies I work, we have the 4 pillars of First Nation sovereignty. That's equity, energy, participation, food sovereignty, and data connectivity. Let's talk about data connectivity for a second. The most vulnerable person in the world is a First Nation woman, and she can't dial 911. I have sisters that are First Nation. I'm First Nation. I have daughters that look very Native. I fear for them that they don't have the same right to fiber and wireless service. We need to catch up there immediately. As far as vertical farming, it's the same thing that Canada is suffering. We need to feed our people. We don't need to be paying $40 for a jug of milk and because you're in the territories. When it comes to energy, the more participation, the better. Fort McKay did the tank farm deal. It took them 2 years, 2 nations, and that's a start. $500 million, 503 million or 13 million, whatever it was. And when it comes to equity, we've already demonstrated that through working with energy companies to buy pipelines, participation, long-term agreements, and create that intergenerational wealth that we're looking for. He said no to the German Chancellor. There's a saying in Ottawa when it comes to First Nations: deny, delay, deflect. You have leaders that come on strong. It's the government. They can wait it out. They can wait out 5 years, 10 years until that young man turns into an elder. That happens. They deny opportunities through legislation. We're under the Indian Act. They deflect. They marginalize our ideas and our people on all levels. And that's their MO. We see it in Trudeau. We believe that we'll be around after he's gone, and we'll make those changes when there's a new government in place. One thing about First Nations, especially in Alberta, we've always been self-sufficient in Western Canada. So what you're talking is about social license. First Nations have the social license. We have our territories. Canada looks at us as a partner. They have to work with us, and when it comes to our resources, they have to work for us. That goes for LNG, the net zero transition, MMRs. We'd like to see that north of Fort McMurray. Everything north of Fort McMurray is run by diesel generator. There's the Queen Charlotte Islands Hideaway. They have 4,500 people, 30 megawatts of power. They burn thousands of gallons of fuel a day. They have the highest per capita carbon footprint per person in the world. That's a little known fact. Ottawa should be looking at solving that problem, the problem for Tuktoyaktuk, our stranded assets that can easily be converted into LNG. Hydrogen, LNG, the ideas are here. Lithium harvesting at the wellhead, MMRs, micro-modular reactors, SMRs, that'll power 300,000 houses at a flick of a switch and you can't turn it off for 60 years. That's what we're looking for. The opportunity to bring that transitional energy. So the question you're asking about grassroots. I associate myself with businesses, First Nation-led businesses, that there's no drama, there's no chief and council. We go low, we're sneaking up on a buffalo. You don't walk up and hit it on the head. You go low, you go behind the bush, and then you pop up, surprise. And that's kind of what we're doing economically. And we have our war party. Our war party are people like-minded that are not elected. So grassroots is by far works the best in no matter what society. And I believe that we're doing that in a big way. My grandfather, born in 1909, he suffered under the residential school system. He had a trap line in the middle of Cold Lake Ware Weapons Range. They gave him 2 weeks, kicked him out in the 1940s. And then in 2000, they gave him a check for $2,000. And he thought he went to lottery. He thought he made out good. But he was always had hope. He didn't despair. He took our family out of that system where the Catholic and RCMP at the time would kidnap kids right out of their home and put them into school, change their name, cut their hair, take them away from their parents. Thankfully, I'm close to my culture. I sweat, I pray, I smudge. I reach out to my First Nation brothers, and it's about Mother Earth right here. That's what it's about. I'm available on LinkedIn. I have a lot of followers. I post every other day. So it's DL Mountain at LinkedIn. I'm not a young man and I have nothing to hide. So this represents my ancestors, and it comes to all my meetings, and it's meaningful in that I remember why I'm there, why I exist, and why I'm working so hard for the future. It's not for monetary gain, it's for the people.